Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
A very good evening and welcome to Friday night on TalkTV. I'm Mike Graham and of course it can only be one thing. It is time for Plank of the Week. And listen, there have been so many planks this week, it's even better than last week, which was better than any other week we've ever done. Today, we've got a fantastic panel lined up for you. We've got Laura Dodsworth, the author and journalist. We've got Steve Denny from Virgin Radio. And we've got Alex Phillips, TalkTV's very own ace presenter. And Will Geddes, the man who can get you out of any sort of trouble, no matter where it is in the world, apparently. Luckily, we haven't had to need to do that yet. Here's what we're going to be fighting for. The plank itself, of course. Last week, we were giving winners all over the place through the show, but we're going to ask Laura Dodsworth to kick us off with a very popular, I think, choice. I think you might even win with it. Go ahead.
Oh, I do hope so, because boy, this man deserves it this week. So Steve Coogan spearheaded a letter of over 2,000 actors, artists and lovies on the 17th of October, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and saying that Israel mustn't retaliate and accusing the UK government of tolerating war crimes. Yeah. Important to note, at that stage, no war crimes have happened.
Right. It's also only 10 days since the atrocities were committed in Israel, so since the 7th.
This is the really important point. You know, this letter calling on the UK government to stop war crimes happening didn't mention the medieval, barbaric, depraved acts of cruelty that happened in the terrorist attack on 7th of October, when 1,500 people were raped and kidnapped and tortured and killed and corpses desecrated. So it was a very tone-deaf letter. It was quite shocking. And having spoken to British Jews about this letter, it felt like a really stinging slap in the face. Now, what's happened in the UK since this terror attack isn't so much people showing solidarity with Jews and saying, you know, we've got your backs, you're safe here, because Britain has been a safe home for Jews for hundreds of years. No, what's happened is that anti-Semitism has skyrocketed. People have said things in the streets which are so awful, I'm not going to repeat them, but terrible pejoratives and insults and references to the Holocaust. Schools were threatened and felt compelled to close. You know, no British child should be scared to go to school in 2023. And I spoke specifically to British Jewish actors who told me they wouldn't sign a letter that I and a small group of people have mounted called the October Declaration, so solidarity with British Jews, because they said they might never work again. So while Steve Coogan and his gang of 2,000 may feel like they were doing a good thing, what they've actually done, I think, is contribute to some British Jews feeling less safe in their home. And so I'm putting him forward for Plank of the Week for a very tone-deaf letter that ignored the worst terrorist attack of our lives since 9/11.
And it's not the first time he's been a plank. He's also been in the news a lot lately for his portrayal of Jimmy Savile, which has been showing on BBC. I think we've got a clip where we can see that he takes the subject matter very much to his heart. Let's have a look.
I come bearing gifts. There you go. That should help drum up trade.
Not half. Kids come in here all the time asking to meet you. Girls especially. On the house as ever. Give my love to the Duchess.
Grazie, amico. Arrivederci.
Prego.
I don't know what I think of that, really. I watched it the other night just to see what it looked like, you know, rather than to actually watch it in its entirety. It's very creepy. And if I was somebody of Steve Coogan's supposed virtue, I think I would have said no to that.
He hasn't got virtue, I'm sorry. Since when did Steve Coogan become the guy who proselytises on behalf of a nation?
The whole letter is tone deaf. I mean, if only we could take the amusement of, say, like that terrible song by all those celebrities during the pandemic. You know, this isn't even amusing. And actually, if you look at the list of people, I looked through the list of people who've actually signed it. None of them are actors that I've got any respect for whatsoever. And you look at these people and they've all been connected to some kind of virtue signalling of some sort. So they're all jumping on the proverbial bandwagon. But it's this tone-deaf process and generality, which I'm seeing right now, which really infuriates me and grinds my gears, about the fact that people are not accepting that this barbaric and horrendous attack. I mean, I've got good friends in Israel. My phone got flooded with videos of the most horrific, nightmarish stuff of some of the atrocities. And people are out there celebrating and protesting. And this letter plays into that whole narrative.
Okay, so
just very unhelpful all round, really.
No, totally. And so the reason I wanted to set up another letter was I couldn't believe people were celebrating in the streets, celebrating an unbelievable act of mass murder, while British Jews, instead of feeling like they can't even say they're Jewish or wondering what kind of threats they might get on the street. So there's a better letter people can sign. It's called the October Declaration at BritishFriendsOfIsrael.org, and it's signed by some really great actors and authors like Sir Tom Stoppard, Stephen Berkoff, Maureen Lipman, 2 former British PMs, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and also peers and MPs from all sides of the House, you know. And that's a really great way to show British Jews we've got their back.
Sure. It is absolutely right. Laura, thanks for that. Steve, over to you for something slightly less serious.
Yes.
Yeah, the dreaded Sussexes.
I think this man's been quite a hefty part in this programme in the past.
He has.
Talking about Prince Harry.
Yes.
What's he done now?
I mean, he and Meghan have won Plank of the Year, I think, a couple of times on the spin.
They have a special
if they win
gold
it this
version.
year, I think we'll give them a gold plank that they can put up in their Montecito home, which is so beautiful.
I just love your impressions. I just do it more, please.
I will. Carry on, though. Tell us
So
why.
this is Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, looking, well, as he thinks, quite cool in his aviators, going to the US Grand Prix.
Yes.
Now, bearing in mind, you know, Eco has.
Yes.
It goes on about us travelling to places and, you know, the amount of fuel we use and the environment. Why is he here? What's he doing? Yet again, he's going back on his words. These.
I mean, Alex, you're a bit of an aficionado of Formula One.
I love
she is my
Formula One.
go-to expert
I
for
love it.
Formula
Oh my
One.
God, I did.
But
Honestly,
listen, I'm going to say this. I'm
addicted.
going to say this though, and you can't deny it. There can be no bigger carbon footprint sport in the entire history of the world and sport, right?
Two things. First of all, I love me a fossil fuel, and I love the sound of a V8 engine. And if you've ever seen Formula E, it sounds like a load of Dyson Hoovers racing each other. It's dreadful. Harry should have gone to that. There's no audience for a reason. But actually, in defence of Formula One, when you do see new innovations in automotive technology, whether it's hybrid engines or the rest of it, that actually tends to be invented in Formula One first. And most of those teams are based in Britain, and we're the ones driving this sort of
but that's not why he went there. He went there.
No, he went there to Paris, didn't he?
He didn't. No, he went there to jinx Mercedes. There he is, pictured with the Mercedes team, Toto Wolff, right there, talking to Harry. Guess what happens next? Mercedes get disqualified because they've got something going on that's a bit dodgy.
It was the wooden plank,
in the wooden
actually.
plank
That's the problem, why they
underneath
got
the floor.
disqualified.
But listen, the other reason he's in the news this week is because he's finally been lampooned again, just when you thought it was safe to go back out into American culture. I'm afraid Harry and Meghan have been done over by Family Guy. Have a look at this.
Love that. Love that.
Sir, your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
I actually think that's a real conversation that they have every day. You know, where she goes, Harry, what are we going to do today for money? Let's make another post.
And that's
on
really what he
Instagram."
looks like when he takes his top off, I'm sure of it.
I'm sure he does. And I mean, he must be at this point. We're hearing all sorts of stories that they're thinking of moving back to London, you know, because he, I think, is starting to finally work out that, you know, the new life that he had planned for himself to be the superstar of America is not quite working out the way he thought.
I really do think that they're going to split in the
Yeah,
next
me too.
decade.
This might be the perfect time for them to split. He returns back to the UK. She takes a bit of time to return, and then, oops, doesn't.
She'll have to find somebody else, though, before she leaves the safety.
Oh, I'm sure she's got a few people lined up.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Alex Phillips, who's your first nominee?
Yeah, mine has to be that horrific tube drive, a video on TfL showing him leading a chant, like a football hooligan.
Right.
You know, free Palestine, free Palestine. This is on people's commute to work. And, you know, some of the scenes we've seen in London, I think to myself, this is a horrific conflict going on.
Yeah.
It's extremely serious. It's an eons-old ideological battle between two religions. It's a geopolitical mess that no one's got the solution to. You've got kids being rebellised in Gaza. You've got babies being beheaded in Israel. And most of the oiks out there are treating it like they're going to the local derby between Man City and Man United.
Because they think
it's not about
because
you.
it's because of people like Steve Coogan, who has kind of, you know, weaponised, you know, what can only be described as this polarisation of all of it. But let's have a look.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
You know, interestingly enough, the speech starts off with him saying that he wanted to go on the march, but he wasn't able to get the day off.
Wasn't able to go on strike.
But then, do you know what happened then? TfL said they didn't know who it was. And they were asked to find this person. He has now finally been suspended. I think somebody went up to TfL and went, guys, if you don't find this guy and suspend him. you lot are going to get suspended because somebody's going to find out exactly who he is. You know, it's pretty easy to find out who's driving which train at what time through Marble Arch, you know?
I hate this politicisation of everything where you go in public life. My next plank's going to touch on this.
Yes.
But, OK, imagine being a British Jew on the tube there. I was talking to somebody in TV last week saying she's under a lot of pressure from her family to take her Star of David off. Like, how would you feel?
Well,
how would you
to be honest, I've been advising
then?
some of my Jewish friends to do exactly that, and just unfortunately,
They shouldn't.
I know they shouldn't, Laura. I know they shouldn't, but you know, one has to err on the side of caution. But I think you look at that video there, and that's a perfect definition of sheep.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, the origin of this video actually is a friend of mine, a friend of Kevin O'Sullivan's, a woman called Wendy Henry, who used to be a newspaper editor who is Jewish and who had gone down to the march to kind of show some solidarity with the Israeli cause. Yeah. And she and her husband were on the train. She, as a Jewish woman, watching and listening to that, and she said it was awful.
Do you think when you see the people at that march that if you gave them a world map, half of them would even be able to point to where Palestine is? Yeah. I don't think so. And
half of them wouldn't be able to tell you how to get to Colindale, where one of Hamas's chiefs lives, and he's got a council house.
This might be rather contentious, but also when I've looked at all the people at those marches, I don't see a great many of people who I can instantly identify as probably being from British families. No. And I think you've come here, you're enjoying the privileges of the West, and a lot of this, to me, seems to be people essentially putting their fingers up at the West. Our prosperity and our privileges, and wanting to say some sort of reason, they're seeing this as a cause to attack us, to sort of stand on the streets and make a big noise. Where were they when Saudi were bombing Yemen and killing babies left, right and centre? Where are they when young women are having FGM and child marriages against them? Where are they with all the people being persecuted in Iran? They don't care. Well, I think the Palestine thing is a fashion. Alex. It's a fashion, and it is an excuse to put two fingers up at Western society.
There's the whole toxic process. I've seen a lot, I'm sure you guys have as well on social media, of the posters which have been put up in various places in Leicester Square last night of people who've been kidnapped or are missing. And these kids walking around and just literally tearing the posters off. And it's not just here in the UK, it's all over the world. It's the weirdest thing ever.
With impunity and smiling about it.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying about the finger up to Western society. I think we can all feel that. Something just feels wrong. But it's more than that. It's also this kind of, it's anti-Semitism that's bubbling under the surface that I never knew was there.
No.
Yeah. I think we all suspected it, but it was
but not as prevalent.
that nobody wanted to make. Whereas now people are having to make it, and it might be too late because we've let it happen, and that's the problem. But this is Plank of the Week, Will, and we need to lighten things up.
Well, I'm afraid it's going to be another serious contender here, Mike.
Really?
Yes, it's the EU putting its sticky beak into things yet again, and they want to ban glitter.
Glitter?
Glitter, yeah. So I blame Keir Starmer for this, personally.
Are you sure they haven't banned it already? Haven't they banned it already?
No, it's coming into effect very shortly.
Okay.
So there's
so that. Time for Christmas.
So invest into glitter now, because obviously all the makeup companies, magicians, protesters probably, nursery schools, they're all buying glitter in bulk right now. And they can use that glitter up until, I think, about 2035. Right. After which, obviously, there can't be any.
Is this a bit like
biodegradable.
Is this a bit like the ban on petrol and diesel cars, then? What, you can't have glitter either?
No glitter. No. Just misery, Michael.
I mean, I don't, to be honest,
children's parties will change forever.
I've got to say I'm here for this. I'm here for this.
Oh,
I really am.
Too.
Because I'm still sweeping up non-biodegradable glitter from the floor after Christmas in June.
It gets everywhere.
I'm quite happy for glitter today.
Well, my only exception is generally when women are wearing glitter in their makeup, and I don't know about you, you sort of come away from it looking sort of covered in glitter.
Oh, do you?
Well,
that depends on what you
So I've heard.
What,
so I've heard.
Every woman will? Every woman?
Not every woman, obviously, Laura. But,
I don't think I've been out with a woman. I've never seen it, but I mean...
I've done it at festivals.
What's the reason why they've banned it?
Well, it's the biodegradable. So basically there's plastic in glitter.
It ends up choking turtles or something.
Possibly, yes. I mean, or certainly entertainment turtles. I don't know. But fundamentally, yes, it's plastics within glitter. So they wanted it to become biodegradable. And
they make sort of fake
And
glitter.
you know what? It's nice that there's obviously a department designated in the EU for challenging these very seriously important issues. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose one person who will not reverse it if he becomes the next Prime Minister will be Keir Starmer. Because, he, of course, doesn't like glitter very much.
I actually felt sorry for him.
True democracy is citizen-led. Politics needs an update. We demand a people's house. We demand a people's house.
I mean, that bloke has got to be one of the biggest planks of all time.
Did he go down a trapdoor just then? I mean, what would he say? He just
They pulled his legs away. Yeah.
It was literally the worst political kind of moment, I think, of the year. Because Starmer has no idea what he's done. And he tries to pretend that he's, Mr. Cool about it. He clearly isn't Mr. Cool.
Yeah.
It's probably quite frightening. You don't know whether the guy's hit you with something or whether he's stuck something in your neck. But he's covered him with glitter. Is that supposed to signify something, Steve?
I speak from experience.
Yes.
I absolutely guarantee the glitter's still on that suit.
Really?
Yeah. Don't ask me why, but I've had a few Saturday
So you can't
nights.
get rid of it?
No,
we should compare notes, buddy.
Let's go out and do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where you go to buy glitter, to be honest. You've all gone.
I'm pretending I don't know.
It's been a
You've
long
got a house
time.
full of it.
I'll
right?
give you a number in a minute, Mike, in the outbreak.
Yeah, it's like the drug dealer's number. Can you get some glitter as well?
I've got to do
now
that.
that it's been banned. For heaven's sake.
We all want the glitter now.
Oh my God. Anyway, the EU, absolute planks. They always are. I mean, they've never actually won this whole show, I don't think. Incredibly. But coming up, we're going to be talking about the police. Because they haven't been doing very well this week, I'm afraid. The banks are back in the frame as well. And also there's a school that's hired a robot to be in charge of it. Could be the way of the future, because we get to stop those teacher strikes. Just hire a load of robots. This is Plank of the Week. We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's a Friday night and you have got a treat in store for you because we've still got loads of really good nominations to come and it's my turn. So I'm going to go back to the pro-Palestine rally of last weekend and I'm going to nominate Sir Mark Rowley, who is, of course, the chief of the Metropolitan Police, a man who was brought in to supposedly clean up the operations down there at Scotland Yard, and he hasn't been doing such a good job. He keeps saying he's lifting up stones and finding things he didn't expect to find, which is pretty surprising because most of us know exactly what's under the stones at Scotland Yard. You probably better than anybody will. But this week, I think they excelled themselves, the police, because, of course, there were 100,000 or so people marching around central London. The police said that they would arrest anybody who was showing any sort of favour to Hamas, any kind of statement, any kind of shouting, any kind of chanting, any kind of flag waving. And the result, of course, was that they didn't do anything of the sort. In fact, the only person who they did arrest or threatened with arrest was somebody who had a British flag, an English flag, or a flag of St George, who was told, if you start any of that racist nonsense, there's going to be some arrests. And people are going, sorry? So when the people were shouting jihad at huge amounts of time, and we've got a clip here, I'm going to show it to you now, we'll tell you in a minute what the result of this was. Have a look.
Demonstrated that honour is with Allah alone. Dignity is with Islam alone. The solution is jihad and jihad alone.
Now, it doesn't help that the speech was being made outside a mosque in North London, organised by an organisation which is actually prescribed as a terrorist organisation in most countries of the world, apart from Britain. Yeah. It turns out that the Metropolitan Police have been very busy, though, because what they've done is they've hired lots of experts in the word jihad. So they've hired a load of people to tell them, actually, jihad doesn't really mean holy war. Sometimes it just means to make yourself a better Muslim, to make yourself a more friendly person, to make yourself a better individual. I don't think anybody's buying that. They also said that they'd hired some flag experts to say that the bloke who was waving what looked like an ISIS flag, oh, no, that wasn't an ISIS flag, even though it was black with a load of Arabic writing on it. No, that was a flag showing Islamic faith. And unfortunately, this guy was shouting jihad, and he was using words that were very clearly anti-Semitic. He was using words like kafir, kafur, war. And people are going, he's waving an ISIS flag, what are you going to do? And then finally, the final ignominy the Metropolitan Police did on Monday was they issued a picture of somebody walking down Bond Street with a piece of placard that actually said, I fully support Hamas, with a question on the tweet saying, were you there? Did you see? Can you help us? To which I said, well, weren't you there? You were actually there, but you didn't arrest anybody. So we've now got a police force who don't arrest people. They wait until later. They say will because it's better for public order. But it's not, is it?
No, I mean, there's a couple of issues here. I think in some defence of Mark Rowley, the laws which he actually had suggested previously, a few years ago, that needed to be put in to broaden on radicalisation, have not been passed yet. And so the government really have to have a kick up the backside to get that sorted.
I nearly said
You said what, Michael?
Yeah, I think we can let that go. It's after 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock, I should say. The point is, no, but there are plenty of rules in place. You can arrest people potentially causing a breach of the peace.
No, I totally agree, but it's this great ambiguity around the laws, and particularly, I mean, look, I've spent the last 3 decades in and out of the Middle East, in Iraq, Afghanistan, and various other places. I've got a lot of Arabian friends and friends from the Arab countries, pretty much most of them. And if you asked any of them and asked them what jihad meant, it would be in a very direct sense. It is not an ambiguous word.
No.
It is very much in terms of a holy war.
But it seems to me that whether you want to get into the niceties of it or not, it's not the job of the Metropolitan Police to start interpreting the word at all. It's their job to see something going on, to note that it is indeed causing a breach of the peace and could potentially, because they've already said that if all of this happened outside of a synagogue, they'd be arresting people.
I would agree also with the Shahada as well. So, I mean, the ISIS flag, there have been many examples I've seen where they're not cookie-cutter versions. There are various different variations.
Yeah, but we all know what they mean by waving it.
The fact is that most of the general public wouldn't realise that. They would see the symbol of the white in the middle of the black flag and the lettering and see it in the context of where it was being used as something to incite violence or incite potential terrorism. So he should have been arrested anyway.
Well, I mean, don't forget, this is the same police force who thought that a flag of St George could potentially incite racism.
Well, I know a bunch of veterans who were heading up there to basically protect the cenotaph, and they were told to turn around and go back because that would have ended up pretty messy, I think.
Well, that's exactly why we need to make sure that whatever happens in the next few weeks, because we've got Remembrance Sunday coming up, that the police have a very strict rule of law to make sure that there isn't a problem where everybody starts clashing.
Will does make a very good point, because Mark Rowley himself wrote to the government and said, we don't have enough powers as the police to go after the extremists.
I don't believe that.
He did.
True.
He said there's too much ambiguity. And I actually think that successive governments have been way too lily-livered about overseeing mass cultural change in this country, being far too weak to stand up to pockets of extremism. We don't prescribe enough organisations from all different faiths and religions. And actually, some of the nations that crack down the hardest on Muslim extremism are Muslim countries themselves.
Well, that operation that you just saw, where the jihad was being called for outside the mosque, that organisation is banned in almost every Muslim country, apart from about 3.
28 countries.
But don't worry, the Metropolitan Police have salvaged all of this trouble at the weekend, because it crossed my path last night. I couldn't quite believe it. The Metropolitan Police put out a tweet yesterday, in the midst of all of this, to say this: the Met documentary is returning for its 4th series. 2 years after filming with the BBC, the new series has arrived at a time of continued change and improvement across the Met. They've actually got, and we're going to have a look at this documentary series, they've actually got a sort of fly-on-the-wall documentary series in its 4th series. It went out this week on Monday night, I think it was, Tuesday night rather, 9 o'clock, prime time, absolutely unbelievable, watching the police doing their work. Let's have a look.
With public trust in the Met Police at a record low.
You really think that this is an overkill? There's 10 of you here for one 14-year-old.
Join the officers on the front line as they continue to combat the most serious crimes in the capital.
There he is, there.
It's been described by the pathologist as one of the most vicious attacks he's ever seen.
You've got a predator out there and it could escalate.
The Met.
I think they all want to be in the thin blue line or something. They all want to think of themselves
as
like...
PR exercise,
yeah, it's like a massive PR.
Like, look at us.
Just do your bleeding job.
BBC plus Met equals PR.
I mean, I've heard firsthand that the morale is absolutely at its lowest. And I mean, then the new recruitment, literally is in almost single figures.
Very low, isn't it?
Per month, single figures.
I'm sure it's not an easy job.
Really.
But,
I'm thinking of signing up.
Forcing people to be in the police, and the reason people used to join it was because you could retire early, and it was a pretty good benefits package. And I get that people don't want to do the job, but the fact is, there's plenty of police. They just don't know what to do. That's my issue.
They'll have been told not to make these arrests because, there's another thing going on. This government, the police, they're obviously terrified about public disorder and riots. And they know that if they arrest people at these protests, there's going to be huge public disorder and riots. And having interviewed the kinds of psychologists that advise at this high level about how you handle this sort of protest situation, they will probably be advising them on a form of crowd control which involves not arresting.
Right. Well, it didn't stop them charging in on Clapham Common, did it, for the Sarah Everard protest? I mean, they were very happy to start slamming women down on the ground and putting their hands behind their backs.
In one direction and not the other.
Yeah, unbelievable. Anyway, let's move on to bankers.
bankers. Yeah, thank you. Very nicely done.
Thank you.
So my second plank of the week is NatWest.
Plank of the week.
Yeah, because the Daily Mail has reported on more messages that have been released following the Nigel Farage Coots debanking.
Yes, unbelievable.
So some senior staff who came underneath Dame Alison's leadership have been messaging about Nigel Farage in private, and the contents of these messages have come to light now, and they're unbelievable. I mean, it's very politicised, very prejudiced, but also quite personal. So they called him a fool, sketchy. Yeah. Somebody said they'd like to throw a milkshake at him. And
Somebody said they were hoping to chase him out of the country.
Chase him out of the country, and we've taken him down a peg or two. So I want anyone listening to forget what you think about Nigel Farage, forget what you think about politics. This is how people working in a bank are talking about their customers. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I wonder
what they say about me.
What are people saying about me at my bank? You know, of course, anyone can put in a subject access request and find out. But I found it really unpleasant to think that, you know, a bank, which is a place of business, it's not a personal thing, that the staff are gossiping in such an unpleasant fashion about somebody. And really,
it's worse than that.
It's really supercilious and gloating.
But it's worse than that, isn't it, Alex? Because it's not just about what they're saying about somebody behind their back. They're actually using their prejudice against that individual to basically debank them, to get rid of them.
We've seen this going on for a long time now, and it really came to a head and was exposed during the whole Brexit vote, when you suddenly realised all those people in the fancy boroughs of London with their six-figure salaries going to their cocktail bars, looked down on everyone else and thought we were utterly atrocious, didn't share our ideology, called us racists, lunatics, ill-educated, too stupid to know what we want. It is snobbery. Yeah. It is absolute bare snobbery. Yeah. And it's not just, you know, Nigel Farage who's been debanked because of this snobbery. There are teachers who have been ostracised in, you know, staff rooms or lost their jobs. There are nursery workers. There are doctors and nurses. At one point, there were people who couldn't even dare to admit they voted Brexit for fear it's going to have an impact on their career. And this is because there's a class of people who live like Wolf of Wall Street, doing what they want with impunity because they got money in the bank, probably evading taxes and everything, looks down at everyone else who's struggling to make a living and thinks that they're just pigs in swill. That is the state of society.
I have to counter that a little bit, Alex, because I do know some people who are, you know, very much Mayfair-based, very wealthy, who've also been debanked. One particular individual I know who's had all their accounts frozen by RBS, which is obviously part of NatWest, and they weren't able to get any sense or reason out of them. I think they're becoming a law unto themselves.
It's hard to get a reasoned response out of them. A lot of people we found, because as Nigel Farage found when he started looking into it, there was dozens and dozens of people who had the same experience, but who didn't have the same kind of ability to amplify that to the rest of the world. And so he's done a great favour for people. But yeah, it worries me a lot that these kind of corporations have become these citadels of wokery. Right? Imagine if you worked there and you actually didn't agree with any of them.
I mean, legally, what they're doing is they're applying essentially money laundering regulations to stop, you know, dodgy people from other countries putting their ill-gained assets through the city of London.
They can't stop the actual
and they're applying it to other people here and saying if you're related to a politician or ever connected to this, this, and this, and the other, the paperwork that comes with dealing with you is too much. So we actually need to change the legislation and say it's very different if you're a Brit to if you're a foreigner. But as Laura was saying, the comments that were exposed, those attitudes, I've encountered them so many times. I get to sort of have one foot in each camp. I get to go to private members clubs in Mayfair and, you know, hang out with people who vote reform and come to our do's and all the rest of it. And I'm a working class girl myself. And I can see that there's two ideologies at war here.
Yeah, it is a problem.
That's unacceptable.
Just to take us into the world of the banking situation, have a look at this. This is what people talk about who work in banks.
She approached me and asked me if we could swap fake notes for real notes.
I had an appointment with a personal trainer. He had me on the floor doing sit-ups.
We help each other out, we go out for drinks in the city. We really get to know each other and it's a really nice place to work. I actually love working here.
I mean, that tells you everything you need to know.
Do you know, whenever
I think we've heard enough. Go on.
Whenever I phone NatWest, because they're my bank, and I try and do, you know, some kind of, you know, money exchanging or whatever, they always say, "What business?" Actual business. They say, "Why are you phoning us? Why are you not using the app?" And I always say, "To keep you in work."
Yeah, right.
You know,
exactly right.
It's like
there's nothing harder to get through to one of these people. Anyway, let's move on. What's your next one, Steve?
Okay, so guys, if you ever thought AI is taking over the world, this is the backup. This
I'm
is
all in favour
theory.
of this, by the way, but I'll let you explain.
Well, it's interesting. There's a top £32,000 a year private school has just appointed an AI chatbot as its headmistress.
Oh, yeah. You're allowed to call it a headmistress.
Well, I don't know. A head them.
It's probably a head.
Head them.
The principal.
A head, right?
I don't think it can chuck, board rubbers at kids.
Probably not. No.
But apparently, it's been given a name, Abigail Bailey. I can tell you that.
So they've given it a gender.
A gender as well.
Is it a girls' school?
It is, in fact, yes.
Okay.
And it's...
Crikey, look at it.
This is beautiful, isn't it? Look at this.
I've never heard of this school. Have you?
So apparently this head teacher can give advice to staff members. It can deal with pupils suffering from ADHD. I'm not quite sure how.
Right.
I'm just reading the reports here. Can an AI bot be woke?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's the answer right there.
Yeah.
I mean, the AI bot is like one of Neil Ferguson's models, isn't it? Whatever you put into it comes out the other end. So if you make it woke, it will be woke.
It will be woke.
It will give you advice about what to do if you're feeling a little bit down. And it will give you advice on how to be more diverse. It will give you lots of advice on how to get help with your ADHD and what sorts of problems you might face. But it is a bit... The only thing that I think is quite encouraging about this is that, teachers, to me, are writing themselves out of the history books, a bit like railway union workers. And pretty soon, if they don't stop going on strike, people are going to say, really? Actually, why don't you just stay out and we'll bring in a load of AI bots to teach the kids?
But maybe like Hollywood, maybe they will go on strike because of the AI bots coming in. You never know. I mean,
well,
maybe,
we can only hope. I mean, but the amount of people that are still going on strike in this country, they've got to be careful, because if your job can be done by an AI bot, and I know there'll be people out there listening going, yeah, your job can be done by an AI bot, but it actually can't.
Wouldn't be as good.
Because even I don't know what I'm going to say next. You can't completely program it,
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's going to be a lot of this going on. And I'm not one of those that's worried about it, because the thing that worries me most about the AI bot conversation, and Laura and I have talked about this before, is all the people that are telling you it's dangerous are the people that invented it.
Yeah.
You're kind of going, sorry, well, you were the one that told us it was a good idea.
The dangers, I believe, are completely different to what we're being told. Now, I'm actually quite a big fan of AI helping in lots of jobs. There's lots of things like, say, conveyancing. I hope my current conveyancers aren't listening. Conveyancing, insurance, where AI is great because it's kind of rules-based, it's very process-driven, it's fine. I think what's interesting about this story is the head teacher of the school, still a real-life head teacher, talked about how great the AI is because being a head teacher is a lonely place. And it's good to have somebody really well-trained to help. And so I think the danger with AI as well is a lot of people anthropomorphise. It's been given a female persona, a name. It's not a person, it's not a woman. It doesn't have a head. It's not a teacher. It's just artificial intelligence.
It's like a sat-nav.
And it's only as good as what you put into it. So these things can be programmed to be very, let's just say not politically neutral.
Yes.
As we've seen already. If you play with ChatGPT, you could get it to write a lyric almost certainly about Nigel Farage, but not Joe Biden, for instance.
Right.
So there are some dangers with it. It's not necessarily an impeccable teacher, but nor are teachers.
Last week I heard an AI bot doing a radio show. Obviously, I work at Virgin Radio, and it was good.
Was it?
And it's together. But they can't do the stuff that we do. They can't do the emotion.
Right.
They haven't got the historical
They've
references.
got no stories.
No stories.
Unless you give them a story
It's
to
just
tell.
very kind of, it is what it is. So I think we're fine. I think we'll be in employment for a bit.
Well, listen, I haven't got much longer on this planet anyway, so as long as we can go for about another 10 years, I'll be fine. Alex, you look as if you're about to say something. We've got to run.
I was
going to
talk about the existential threat and the dehumanisation of everything becoming robots, but, I haven't got time for it. Never mind.
Luckily, there's no time for the end of the world chat. We'll get to that coming up. But coming up, we're going to go north of the border. Will Geddes is going to tell us about lingerie, one of his favourite subjects. And I'm going to talk about the Tories. It's all coming up on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're very nearly getting through these. We've got a couple more to do, though, so we haven't quite decided exactly who is going to be the winner yet. And Alex Phillips has got another opportunity to make another nomination. Alex, who you got for us?
Yeah, it's one of my favourite people to nominate for everything bad, and that's Nicola Sturgeon.
Of course.
Any excuse to throw her on the
Bring it
pile.
on, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, first of all, she's just passed her driving test.
Yes.
That is the story. That is the headline. And I'm like, OK, better late than never.
Yeah.
My other half doesn't drive, and I find that a bit creepy.
That is a bit odd.
So I've been nagging him
particular
about
reason
this.
why?
He was born and brought up in London. You find London.
Yeah, do you know, I was the same. I
world's...
learned how to drive when I was 23, after I moved out of London and went to New York.
Right, so
learned how
this
to
is
drive
it.
in the Shea Stadium parking lot.
He's only just sort of left the bubble of London,
Yeah.
so it's about time he got some wheels underneath him.
Yes.
But Nicola Sturgeon, however, doesn't have that excuse.
No.
She was Scottish First Minister. It's hardly a country that is famed for public transport connections between the islands and the Highlands, is it now? And she didn't have a driving licence. I'm like, how did you get about the country and sort of, you know...
Yeah, but on the other hand, I knew Nicola Sturgeon before she became First Minister, when she was sort of just a lowly MEP and member of the Scottish National Party. And she seemed like a very normal, ordinary woman.
Did she just never leave Edinburgh?
Well, no, she lives because she's from Glasgow, right? And
Licence?
so Glasgow is a very easy city to get around. You know, there's taxis, there's buses, there's
OK, that's it though. But she was First Minister of Scotland, representing that country, woman of the people.
Yeah, but once
Scottish
you're First Minister,
independence.
but once you're First Minister, you don't drive around yourself, do you?
But what
You've
was
got
she
a
doing
driver.
up until the point she was First Minister? Just getting on the same train backwards and forwards.
I mean, backwards and forwards to Edinburgh to Glasgow is a massive thing. It's like coming into London from Sevenoaks. I mean, there's loads of people doing it.
Come on. I mean, look,
don't need a car in Glasgow or
politician
Edinburgh.
needs to get around the country and know their constituencies.
Well, her
especially if you're
constituency is in
trying to run
Glasgow, though. I mean, it's in Govan.
But she ended up First Minister running the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Don't defend her, Mike. What are you doing?
I'm not defending her. I'm just saying you don't need to have a car to live in Glasgow.
I'd like to see in a cart drawn by Highland cattle. That would have been appropriate.
Also, can I just say, the magic of this is that she doesn't have a driving licence and yet she had a motorhome.
What I expected to see when they said Nicola Sturgeon's finally learned how to drive was her at the helm of a motorhome. But, you know, apparently they didn't do that. They did this instead.
Will you apologise for damaging Scotland, Miss Sturgeon? When will you resign?
Oh, here she is getting in the wrong car.
We've all been there.
She'll have to make sure that it's ULEZ compliant, because if you drive into Glasgow, do you know it's much worse than it is here? Yeah. You don't even get a chance to pay ahead of time. You just get fined 60 quid.
Wow.
So you get no chance to say, I'd like to drive there.
Isn't it?
Can I buy a ticket for 12 quid? You just get fined. So people have found themselves... There's a judicial review going on at the moment, so maybe she'll change her mind about penalising the old motorists. Right, Will, we've got you on your favourite subject.
Oh, a subject close to my heart,
yes.
Michael. And something which I managed to tick off my bucket list.
Did you?
I was very fortunate enough to be invited to a Victoria's Secret fashion show. But unfortunately, Victoria's Secret has come into the realms of a candidate for Plank of the Week.
Yes.
And the reason being is that,
didn't they?
Well, it's an interesting one. Do they deserve a Plank of the Week? That's obviously for you to decide. But they decided to go down the woke avenue and started to introduce large-sized models and trans and all sorts of other supposed representatives of society, which, as long as the last time I checked the figures, are fairly small, to be honest. But they've now decided, because they've had such loss of sales, because they've been using these new standards or these new role models for their product, it's kind of taken the sexy out of sexy, maybe.
So what, a bit too much inclusiveness? Is that
maybe a little too much, and I think they're suffering the Budweiser syndrome, where it's backfiring horrendously on the market.
Right.
Now, I'm sure the vast majority of their purchasers and their customers are generally women, but I think there are probably a good proportion of men who may also buy it for their other halves. So I think they've realised by their drop in sales that they have to go back to the traditional values, which I'm so pleased
Well, listen, I think we can have a look at what they now think is acceptable to show people, which is quite shocking, really. I mean, Will, you will have remembered that from days gone by.
Yeah, indeed.
There used to be a thing called Fashion TV, which I remember used to come on in every newsroom that I ever worked in. It was the only time you ever saw all the blokes in the office watching fashion television.
Never doing any work.
It was all, it was all models walking up and down. But I mean, we've sort of come full circle now then. So presumably Victoria's Secret, there's a great song about Victoria's Secret written by a woman whose name I forget, who says that, you know, I know Victoria's Secret, it's all made by a man, which is actually quite funny and quite a good feminist kind of message. It's much better than for them to go, oh, let's just show a load of really not very nice-looking models because it's going to be more woke.
But we also look at the new show that's just come on Apple recently, which is about the traditional supermodels, the famous ones, the Naomis, the Linda Evangelistas, and the rest.
Cindy
and
Crawford.
the show has been performing so well, apparently. And I think thankfully, or maybe hopefully, we're turning a corner now away from this wokeness and this inclusivity to actually going, you know what, we need aspirational stuff. We want glamorous stuff. We want stuff.
Oh, let's ask the women on the panel.
I'm dying to. Can I give you two sides of women on this? Right.
Yeah.
First of all, there was a lingerie company that I used to buy a fair amount of my lingerie from, and then it started featuring a trans-identified male.
Yes.
In the underwear, and it actually really
That's
put me
not
off.
the poster of the guy with the beard, is it? Because there's one that did a poster of a guy
No,
with a beard.
didn't have a beard. One that was supposed to look quite feminine, but the problem is had very large breast implants. So, well, I don't really know how that's going to look on me then. But you'd never see the pants. I was like, okay, that's because there's a penis
something in them.
and it really put me off. And so then I didn't want to buy that. I didn't want to buy that underwear anymore. So the thing is, you know, as a woman, you also want to see something that's aspirational and beautiful that you want to wear. But I will say that I think that Victoria's Secret maybe pushed it a bit too far before. You know, you could read interviews with models where they would say they wouldn't drink any water for 24 hours before the runway, so they look really slim. You know, this is kind of insane when you have to dehydrate yourself to look thin.
By the same token,
so there's got to be a balance.
By the same token, Alex, if you've got ridiculous-looking women who are ridiculously thin, that's not a great image either, is it?
No.
My take on all of this is a lot of companies have to do the woking and de-woking just to get headlines again.
Yeah.
And I just think Victoria's Secret started making really crap underwear. I mean, once upon a time, this was sort of expensive, nice quality
they went
stuff.
mass market,
and then
didn't
they popped up a shop down every high street and at every airport
I think that
selling
was the mistake.
perfumes that smelled like toilet cleaners. And everyone went, oh, this stuff's rubbish. I'm not going to fork out 20 quid for a thong made in China by some blind children.
Yeah.
It's good quality. It's good quality.
It's rubbish, isn't it? Exactly.
I tell you what,
that's the problem.
Come Valentine's Day, there will be confused men looking terrified.
Yeah.
Still in there. We do it every year, and it happens. There in Marks and Spencer's. There we go.
Well, you just have to stop buying Victoria's Secret underwear, Steve.
Sorry, Mike.
Stop
I'll get
wearing
it online.
As well. You know, but the thing is, I mean, so do you think this is going to backfire then?
No, I don't think it will. I think it's actually going to work incredibly well for them. I think that the fact that, you know, and you look at that, and I mean, as I said, I was fortunate enough to go to one of the shows. It was hugely glamorous. It was great. All the stuff that you saw on the runway was not the stuff that you would find in the store whatsoever. But it's a bit like haute couture and some of the high-end fashion labels. You know, they'll have runway stuff, which is purely concept and inspirational.
They're stuff with the glitter ban, aren't they?
They will. That's a very good point.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Pray for Victoria's Secret.
Well,
hashtag.
Pray for Victoria's. Words you never thought you'd hear. Pray for Victoria's Secret. Anyway, listen. Coming up, I've got my final nomination, and I'm terribly sorry, guys, but I'm beginning to think that the two best nominations are mine. But, you know, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. It's all coming up next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. There's a lot of mirth and jollity going on here, which is very unusual for Plank of the Week, I have to say, because I want to be very, very serious with my final nomination. And it is, I'm afraid, much against my better judgment, the Conservative Party, who are not having a great time at the moment. Not least, you'll all remember that this is the first anniversary of Rishi Sunak's Prime Ministership, which nobody can really quite believe, because it seemed like a year since he's been in charge. And I found myself asking lots of people this week, what's he actually done in a year, and hasn't done very much. And there's not very much you can say that he has done. The one thing he has continued to do, though, as was the luck of his predecessor and the one before that, managed to lose more seats. You know, they got in 2019 with an 80-seat majority. I don't know what it is now, but I think it's down below sort of 60-something. And so on Thursday of last week, two by-elections, which were lost incredibly much by the two Tory candidates. The two Tory candidates in question, one of whom is Andrew Cooper, you're going to see him now, they both stormed out of the count. I mean, you'll have been at a few of these things, Alex, and I mean, it's sort of tradition. It's tradition. Well, yeah, it's tradition to stay till the bitter end and take your medicine and watch, you know, the gloating of the winner and all of that. But both of them obviously were told to get the hell out of there, and we can see Andrew Cooper storming out now. After the event, when all the people who voted for the Labour Party managed to get the swing to somewhere like 25%, which meant that if in fact that was replicated, and we don't think it would be on a general election, the Tories would have something like 80 seats. Instead of, you know, the hundreds that they've got now. The Tory party actually put out their spokesman, I think it was Greg Hands, to say that, well, clearly there's no appetite for voting Labour. And you're going, sorry? I mean, it's the only thing that anybody has voted, really. I mean, Reform did quite well in one of them, I think. But basically, you know, yes, the Tory party have lost the people who voted last time because they didn't bother to vote. But I just think, you know, for the Tory party to now be sitting there telling us that there's no appetite for the other side, it's kind of disingenuous.
It's not an appetite. They might be holding their nose while they do it.
No, technically, the Labour vote did not go up. Particularly, in one constituency, it even went down.
Yeah.
What did go up was people not voting at all.
Right.
And I watched Prime Minister's questions this week. You know, I was treating myself to a nice lunchtime, and all I saw was Rishi Sunak being semi-competent, an old Lego head with a clipboard, having to read his lines, looking like he didn't have a clue where he even was.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm no fan of the Conservative Party. I mean, that whole parlour games in Parliament, 3 different Prime Ministers, 5 different Chancellors, no one knew what was going on from one second to the next because they I don't know, grinding their axes and plotting against each other rather than just getting on with running the country. I can't stick them. But when I look at the Labour Party front bench and I see all those smugglings lined up, David Lammy and the Baroness Baroness Nugent.
Oh, yeah.
And and old Lego head himself without a thought in his head.
I love that.
And I just think, oh my life. I mean, can we not do any better than
I don't think
these?
anyone could actually name more than about 3 or 4 of the front bench of the Labour Party, could they? I mean, I can't. I'm supposed to be able to know who they all are. Yeah. Can you name more than 4 of them?
Don't put me on the spot.
Sorry,
I need an AI head teacher to help me. Where's my AI
No, but I
bot?
mean, that's a problem for them, because if we
Keir
can't do
Starmer,
it...
You've got an AI Prime Minister, haven't you,
Yeah,
basically?
that's right. He's like that guy they used to have on MTV. What was his name? You know,
Max Headroom.
Max Headroom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he looks like, and he just, you know, it's what he sounds like. And when you hear him, you've immediately forgotten what he said.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Tories have taken what was a once proud situation just before Brexit happened, just before that party we all went to on January 31st of 2020, thinking this is going to be great.
Yeah, I got him on the guest list.
I was doing the security. He did. And I wasn't even very well that day as well, so I should have not even been there. But it was great. And suddenly there's this sort of new dawn. And they've managed to kind of trash it and burn it and just ruin it. And we're all, look where we are, for heaven's sake. Anyway, that brings us to the end of Plank of the Week. And I was thinking about putting the Tories up as the winners, but actually I don't think it's that good after trying to explain it to everybody. But I'll tell you what I do like. I mean, I do like Steve Coogan and I do like all the Palestinian, you know, tube drivers and all the rest of it. But I think it has to go to the Metropolitan Police, doesn't it? It has to go to Mark Rowley, the man who won't arrest anybody for declaring holy war on the streets of London against a particular ethnic group of people who are feeling pretty put upon at the moment, and a man who seems to know more about the word jihad than he knows about the word arrest. So what can I tell you? I think it's Sir Mark Rowley, it's the Metropolitan Police, I'm afraid. So I've won it. So here you are, Mark Rowley, you get Plank of the Week. But sorry about that, guys. But listen, thank you so much. Laura Dodsworth, Steve Denyer, Alex Phillips, Will Geddes, of course. Thank you so much. We'll be back same time next week. Coming up at 11:30 tonight, it is The World According to Mike Graham. It's after the pubs have shut, so get as drunk as you want and then have a laugh. Meantime, coming up next is Friday Night with Nadine Dorries. See you soon.